Hi guys, I'm Rachel Handler. I'm from New York Magazine and Vulture. Very excited to be here today. And I thought I would go around and have everybody who's involved in the panel introduce themselves and explain their connection to the conversation we'll be having.
Who's going first? Come on, Fiona.
I'll go first. I'll go first. I'm Fiona. My name is Fiona Apple, and I have been a musician for a long time, but now I am a very proud court watcher, and that is my biggest connection to all of this. And I do feel very connected to all of this because of the time I spent being a court watcher. Be a court watcher, everybody. Do it.
Hey, I'll go next. Hey, everyone. My name is Qiana. And I am the executive director of Life After Release, which is kind of the co-parent or the parent of the Court Watch PG program. And I'm so happy to be here. And I'll pass it to Scott.
Hey y'all, Scott Hechinger, based in Brooklyn, was a public defender for close to a decade and now lead an organization that supports defenders, people with direct experience and organizers, combining their forces with artists to think about how to move their advocacy outside of court to shift the narrative. And contacted by the folks in PG County and helped shed some light on what's going on there. And that led to Court Watch becoming more of a thing there. And looking forward to talking more.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marguerite Lanaux. I'm a supervising attorney at the Prince George's County Public Defender's Office in Maryland. My connection, as Scott said, is that Scott reached out to us and Fiona and Qiana are court watching our cases and we love it. We encourage everybody to court watch.
So Qiana, we're here first and foremost because we want to talk about accountability. We want to talk about transparency in the justice system and how people can get involved. So since Court Watch is sort of the center of all this, can you tell us a little bit about what Court Watch is exactly?
Okay, so Court Watch originally began with us as a project in 2018 when we had a prosecutor that was running for office. And we wanted to really just find out, what did the prosecutor do? We knew what they said when they were running for office, but we did not know exactly how we could measure anything that they said with any real metrics. So we started a court watching project. And then we continued on periodically after that. But we just, in February 2020, last year, is when we kicked it off to start this program in full. And then COVID hit right in March, right? So it was kind of like a thing where we started off court watching without COVID. A month later, we're in COVID season, and then all these things just start happening. But the main reason why you court watch is because out of all of the elected officials that we have, that we know about, our legislators and our elected officials in the city council, you can pretty much kind of go back to their voting records and see how they voted, or you can hold them accountable. If it's a pothole that hasn't been fixed, right? You can kind of hold them accountable for the school budgets. These are things that are tangible that you can really see. However, judges and prosecutors, there's really no other way to hold them accountable without actually going into the courtroom. And so the Court Watch program is that tool of accountability that folks could use to hold those key players accountable and be able to vote correctly, remove someone out of a seat if they have to, or to be able to just stop that bottleneck or stop the prison pipeline that we have, that the judges and the prosecutors are largely in part in control of.
And how specifically did you get volunteers involved, and what can you talk to me a little about what like sort of day in the volunteer's life, what it looks like exactly?
Oh, our court watch is lit. Fiona could tell you, we have all these different we have all these different like group chats that we talk about, but it really started, like I said, the pandemic had started. Scott had reached out, and we decided that we were going to do the Gassing for Justice to try to get folks out of jail. And in doing that, we we launched the start of like a rebirth of like, we have like over 250 or so trained volunteers right now to do Court Watch, and it's so accessible, it's so uniting, and we are just having a ball. We are having a really, I mean, not to say that it's fun to do, but it's just terror watching, you know, to watch it and actually see it, and to actually see like the live business going on in our chats, or it's really, really live. But it had a lot to do with the Gasping for Justice, when we were trying to get folks out of the jail in the actual lawsuit that was filed by CRC. And so it came, you know, this was like a, what do you call it, a spinoff of the Gasping for Justice, where we had just like a lot of volunteers sign up. And so now we are volunteer strong, and we are really doing a good job with about, you know, 30 court watchers in the courtrooms every day.
Can you explain a little bit about Gasping for Justice and that whole campaign?
So the Gasping for Justice campaign originally started at the peak of the pandemic, when we were just now figuring out that the world was going to be on lockdown, and understanding that there was a group of individuals, a group of humans that is probably the least thought about group of people in the country, and it's the folks that are incarcerated. And so the Gasping for Justice campaign aimed to basically tell the stories of folks who were charged with a crime and facing death inside of a COVID cage, is what I call them, but sitting inside of a prison, or sitting inside of a jail cell waiting for a court date and being held, you know, possibly facing COVID, was something that was real. And so that was the Gasping for Justice that came about, and Scott can tell you more about how that kind of came about.
Sure. I mean, so as a public defender, you know, for a long time, Marguerite can talk more to this, you know, it's this strange feeling where at a time when injustice and violence is more visible than ever on the outside of court, post George Floyd, and the kind of each and every one of these videos that come out because of iPhone footage, people are more aware of state violence. But inside a court, where state violence is no less serious, inside jails, it's invisible. It's blocked by the legalese of court. It's blocked by physical walls. And so, you know, COVID strikes, and all of these things are just kind of exacerbated, that defenders, people with direct experience, organizers know really well that the system is unhealthy, that it's coercive, that people are caged in horrific conditions, pre-trial, presumed innocent, and post-conviction. That justice is not really based in truth. It's based on, you know, the color of your skin, where you wind up, where you're living. And we were seeing that all across the country. I mean, there's this terror. I mean, defenders and organizers working in this field are kind of used to an incredible sense of urgency, right? Because any day in a cage is too many. It's mental from a mental health standpoint, from a physical standpoint, it's damaging and violent. You're separated from people in need of caretaking, et cetera. But it became literally this death sentence. And around the country, including in PG County, my organization, working with a range of folks, we're hearing the same things over and over again. No ability to social distance. And you can't when you're packed that tightly. Asymptomatic people caged with symptomatic people, no PPE. If you requested medical attention, you either didn't get it or you had to pay for it. And when you got it, you were placed in horrible quarantine cells where you had to clean up the last person's mess. Horrific. We actually got outreach from Prince George's County. So Claire Glenn, another public defender in the PG County Defender's Office, and explained the current situation. We learned more about it from Qiana, which was, despite these conditions, the judges were already signing boilerplate motions denying release. There was one amazing dedicated court watcher, Qiana's partner, Carmen, who's in court taking copious notes, sending these reports to the state's attorney, Aisha Braveboy. Nothing's changing. And Civil Rights Court, Qiana mentioned CRC, filed this extraordinary litigation that contained 60 sworn declarations from people who were inside, who risked their lives, literally in retaliation, to write about their conditions in horrifying detail. Defenders banging their heads against the wall, organizers not getting any kind of feedback. And then this federal judge, even after seeing these sworn declarations, she dismisses them as unhelpful, only marginally relevant, and complains that it's not her job to cull the chaff from the wheat. And so we were called in at this time being like, this traditional legal advocacy inside like was not shedding enough light. So like, what can we do? And we weren't able to do anything in court, but we had these statements. And so we together, Qiana, Defender Office, Civil Rights Corps, we got together with this organization called Broadway Advocacy Coalition up in New York and thought, okay, what if we had people actually read their words? So like really kind of reimagine this lawsuit and put it into words and put it into like literally selfie videos. And so we reached out to a range of folks, including a friend and colleague, Fiona, to read these words. We got in consent from everyone that was on the inside to share them in any way. And within a week and a half, over 60 people sent in these sworn declarations, a collection of famous people, singers, artists, Broadway actors, actresses, advocates, Black law school deans, public defenders. And we launched this thing. And thanks to just the attention that it garnered, we drove people to take action. One of the major actions was sign up to Court Watch, and went from 1 to, I think it was like 7 days, 175, and then it just grew from there. That was like, when I heard from Qiana, the number of people that signed up, it was just like, yes, because as a public defender, and I'll stop talking in a second, like injustice happens. This is not the first time this has been said. I didn't make this up, but it's true. Injustice happens in empty courtrooms, but it's not enough for people just to pack the court. That's important. But it's also, there's a language of court, there's a speed of court that you could be enmeshed in this work and know everything about it. But you go into court, if I went to court in DC or Prince George's County, I wouldn't understand what the heck was going on because they speak in penal laws and speak in legalese. And so what Court Watch does is not only bring you in, but they train you in the language. They train you in what to look for. And so anyway, long story short, got a call. That's, worked with this incredible organization and just feel so, organizations, and just feel so lucky to be part of this crew. Fiona, what's up?
Fiona, I was going to ask if you could talk a little about how you got involved with Gasping for Justice and with Court Watch, and if you're willing, maybe read the statement that you read for the campaign.
You're me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, Qiana, Fiona sounds alike. I was like, I didn't know. I don't have the statement. I didn't know.
Oh, that's okay.
I should know it by heart by now. So how did I get involved with Court Watch and Gasping for Justice? Okay, so, well, it from Scott, it all stemmed back from, I contacted Scott a long time ago for the While They Wait Fund, and that just started this conversation with us. And I had given money, but and giving money is good, but it doesn't change anything inside of you. You know, it doesn't like bring you any closer to the issue or really make you understand or really make it your issue so that you really truly do care in it and you're invested in it and it matters to you. It's easy to like give money or to read articles or do stuff. And like, I just kind of felt like this doesn't feel like I'm getting any closer to anything. I just feel just as ignorant as I was before I gave any money. And I keep reading things, but I don't really like, it's amazing actually, since I started Court Watch, my reading apprehension has gone sky high. I'm able to read like difficult articles that I didn't feel like I had the energy or the emotional capacity to read before. And I've been noticing like my brain is really, not to be like, oh, this is really helping me, but like it's helping me to become a better person because it's helping me, the first time you listen is enough. And it's like what Court Watch says, like, don't believe us, come watch. Really, don't believe us, come watch. You will hear it or listen as they've kicked us off the video. You will hear it. You will be like me where you're muted, but you're yelling, you're going, let him out, let him out. He only did this. He didn't have a job. What do you think he's going to do? Like you're just, you will care like that. And the second that also something that happens is like, you get assigned loved ones. And that is so important to this whole thing. The first thing that I learned was that we do not call them defendants, we call them loved ones. And I think that says it kind of says it all about this. These are people who are loved, who love other people. These And they have lives that do matter, and they have futures to get back to. They're going to school, they're getting a job, or they were laid off in the pandemic. I mean, the second that you get assigned a loved one, you know, you look up their case and you're ready and you're listening for that case to be called. And then you're like, you know, I put my red heart next to my loved ones and I'm like, okay, come on, Mr. Whatever, you know, and then I'll be listening and I feel completely connected to the loved ones that I'm assigned to. And I think about them afterwards. There's a few that I just can't get off my mind because I heard how they were treated and I heard them be sent back in when they should not have been sent back in. I heard them sent back in and I know they need their meds, but they were sent back in because they have to wait for mental health court. But mental health court doesn't meet except for, you know, the couple days every now and then. So they got to wait in there and everybody's, oh, this is what we have to do, but it's not what they have to do. But you care. And I think that court watching is as good for the court watcher as it is for everything else. And I think that it's really essential that people, you know, especially like white people who have been sheltered from a lot of these problems their whole lives, like me, who never even, you know, think to consider things because they were never slapped in the face with it because their lives weren't affected by it. We need people to have firsthand connections with people who are incarcerated or people who have been through the system, so that you really do care. And it really does feel like, I mean, I feel like I am, you know, these loved ones are loved by me. When I'm assigned them, I care about them. And I think that's really, really important. Sorry, I talked so long.
Oh, that was really beautiful. Thank you. Sorry, I'm having internet problems, so I'm on my phone now.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
But Marguerite, can you speak a little bit about why Court Watch is so important in PG County specifically and in your experience with it?
Yeah, so just even listening to Fiona, I mean, I just love hearing like she knows the lingo, like she's the loved ones and, you know, mental health court isn't for another 20 days and they need their meds, just all of the things that we as public defenders go through and the frustrations that we go through that, you know, often you don't feel like anybody really understands. And it often feels like you're banging your head against the wall trying to help, you know, the clients. And so really what Court Watch does is it allows the community to have a say in what is going on in the community, right? Like it allows the community to kind of direct how they want to see the justice system work and have a real input and a real voice. And the clients love it as well. They love to know that other people are listening and there's kind of this check on, you know, the system that kind of just, once you get in it, it just spews people up and just, it's like this cycle. Think of it like a tornado that's really hard to get out of, you know, nearly impossible to get out of if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the education, wrong place, wrong time, mental health, substance abuse, all sorts of issues that, you know, regular people, all of us go through, but some of us end up in locked up because of it. And you know what, the importance of Court Watch is also that I think it reminds you not to judge somebody by their worst day, right? Like, you know, because you never, if you hear the backstory of how some of these things happen, you just don't know, you don't think about it that way. And then it gives you that context. So I think it just, you know, we can all be a little bit kinder to one another, a little bit more empathetic to one another. And ultimately, I think that we'll start to see the type of changes that right now people want and we're moving towards.
And they're trying to cut off virtual access in PG County, right? And can you talk a bit about the petition and sort of the way that people can help with that cause as well?
So I'm going to let Qiana talk about the petition itself, but I will say that as far as when you say they're trying to cut off virtual. So I just want to give some context to prior to the pandemic, Prince George's County was not virtual, right? We all went to court every day. And the only way to find out what was going on in the courtroom was to physically be at the Prince George's County courthouse. The pandemic really gave, you know, put everybody in a position of no one knew what was going on. No one knew how to respond to it. We all had to make changes. And so one of those changes were they started virtual access to court proceedings. And it's open because it's not just the attorneys who need to be on, it's witnesses. It's, especially at bond hearings when a judge is reviewing. So let me back up. When someone gets arrested, a bond is set by a commissioner. After, if they're not able to make bond or that bond is, they're not given a bond, it's reviewed by the judge. That's just the law in Maryland. And so for the bond hearings, we want to bring in family members who can speak to whether or not this person has some place to live, whether or not there is something more than simply the allegations about them. So the courtrooms and the virtual part had to be open to other people. So it really gave the ability for court watchers to have this firsthand access to the courtrooms. It is not a law in Prince George's County or the state of Maryland for any hearing to be virtual. In order for the hearings to stay virtual after the pandemic kind of, I don't know if it's ever going away, but things with the pandemic get back to normal, there has to be changes to a lot of different legislation in order, or from the highest court, to say that it will remain or there will be virtual access to courts. So that's where I think Qiana can take it as to kind of what the community, again, why it's so important to have the community involved, because if the community is telling the courts, this is something that we want, that's who they listen to.
Qiana, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Marguerite. So virtual access or remote access is probably one of the better things that have come out of this pandemic, and something that we didn't even know we needed until we got it, right? Fiona made mention, and this is something that we've kind of been going on, is that cops have body cameras, right? Because it's been proven that they have been just police brutality, they've been killing people. And so it's been, the public trust is completely broken, and they want to have these body cameras for transparency. And so the body cameras, I have my own idea and my own opinion around body cameras on cops, right? But when you talk about streaming a court case or having live access, the judges and the prosecutors, what it does is I've coined the term IA, or instant accountability, right? And so what that does is that they get to see their community, their constituents, their neighbors, their Fiona and other people faces on the screen looking back at them. And it kind of turns their mindset and changes the culture of the courtroom almost immediately. And so that level, it makes the person on trial more human. It makes the judge more, it makes everybody more human, and makes the playing field just a little bit more equal. And so it's no longer like the judge's courtroom, you go into a judge's courtroom, that's the first, this is my courtroom. Really, it's just, we're virtual, like, so it just takes that kind of away. And the need for virtual access or remote access, I don't think that it should ever go anywhere. I also do something called participatory defense. That's the second program that we have. And in participatory defense, we had a young man, he was charged when he was 16 years old. And the case took about, 2 years to go through all his motions. And we just recently had his sentencing hearing because he accepted a plea deal. And he was sentenced, he was supposed to get house arrest and some other, like 3 years probation. Well, let me tell you, because of virtual access, we were able to get almost 70 people on the line for his hearing. And that judge was so, I don't think she's ever seen anything like that before. And she, she was just overwhelmed with just emotions. And so was the prosecutor. By God, it's hard to get a prosecutor but this prosecutor had changed his whole outlook. And he said, basically because of the outpouring of support that's here today from the community, I don't even think it's necessary to punish him any longer. I was like, what? Like, I was expecting something, but I was not expecting a prosecutor from Prince George's County to say those words. And so when it came out, we saved that young man's life just by logging on and going into the court. Some of those people were from California, some of those people from New York, but it doesn't matter. They're people, and we all are people. And so that's what remote access does. It lets them know that we are people and that we have access to this courtroom, and it makes those judges and prosecutors straighten up a little bit, or a lot.
Can you, that is, I mean, that's an incredible story. I'm curious if there are other examples of ways that this pressure of instant accountability has sort of changed the trajectory of these cases.
I mean, I can go ahead, Marguerite.
So with instant accountability, when you say change the trajectory of the case, when we're talking just in the realm of bond hearings, which is mainly what the court watchers are doing, one of the things that a judge, a prosecutor, and a person, really, my client wants to know is that there's someone there to support him or her. A lot of times we're especially in a pandemic or anytime there is any type of strife in going on in the world, whether it's we're in a recession or any type of strife going on, you start to see quality of life crimes. And quality of life crimes allegations are usually because either you don't have anything to do, you don't have any money, or something is going on in your life. When you have the support of the community who is saying, you have a person from California who's saying, I'm a teacher, or I can help this young man or young woman apply for college or get back into a program, those are the type of things that speak to public safety, which is really, I think, what everybody wants, right? Like the whole purpose is that we have safe communities. And so when the community comes together and rallies around a person, it really mitigates that need to punish that person, because the criminal justice system should be about reform. It should be about, second chances and the ability to rehabilitate as opposed to just punishment. But rehabilitation comes when there's community support. Court Watch is the greatest example of community support.
Rachel, you talk about case trajectory. There's this common misperception, and it's driven by the media and by TV and movies, that like the way our system operates is like how it's written in the Constitution. You're accused of a crime and you are able to work collectively and collaboratively with your attorney, and ultimately you go to trial where there's a jury of your peers and a judgment is rendered, and only then could you be incarcerated. But the reality is, once bail is set, that's like the bail hearings that happen within 24, 48 hours after your arrest, when no one knows anything about anything that's going on, can't assess truly anything. That's the main decider. That dictates the entire outcomes of the case, right? So like if bail gets set, you're there's actually some numbers. You're far more likely to plead guilty, whether you're innocent or guilty, whether you were stopped and frisked unconstitutionally or not, because you just want to get out. And the guilty pleas in felony cases end up with higher sentences. You plead guilty to worse crimes. And going back to public safety, jail doesn't increase public safety. It actually, increases the likelihood that you're going to be further marginalized. You're going to be more likely to recidivate. And so like decarceration and these ideas and accountability, this is an actual public safety solution, an actual solution. It's a public health issue. So I just wanted to say that like the way that instant accountability in the possibility, even the slight possibility that a judge's decision or a prosecutor's ask or request for bail would be slightly different, can change the entire trajectory of a life, of a case, of a community. Really quick, I'm seeing a question about NYC, just to give the kind of broader, like kind of national lens, including NYC. Bail and pretrial detention, unfortunately, exist everywhere, and that's no less true in New York City and in New York. Cash bail, people, there's thousands of people right now, and thousands more than there would have been if we hadn't rolled back bail reform based upon fear mongering. Thousands of people are in Rikers Island right now. 92% of them are Black and brown. The vast majority of them are pretrial, haven't been convicted of anything, and the majority of them are sitting on Rikers Island simply because they can't afford to buy their freedom. So the way that this implicates New York is, first of all, bail and pretrial detention, huge issue. Court Watch has never been remote or virtual. And just as it's important, and they've led the way in PG County, showing how it's so critical, we need to be doing that in New York. We need to be doing that across the country. Because I'll tell you, even though court is technically public, anyone can come. Y'all can come anytime. Public transportation is expensive, turns out. It's the difference between eating for a day. People are not going to come to court. Court is open, at least in New York City, all the time, except for 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. And people work, can't take time off from jobs. So the ability to sign in from wherever you are at any time to hold the courts accountable. Like Qiana said, it is the only thing I think positive that's come out of COVID since in relation to the criminal legal system. Greater access means greater accountability, means ultimately less incarceration, more fairness, greater public health, greater public safety.
Marguerite, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about to the point of about bail and about pretrial detention, the difficulty of getting someone out of that system once they're in it.
So, aside from the fact that the criminal justice system over incarcerates, and we have an issue with that, we know that majority of individuals who are incarcerated are Black and brown, and the common denominator of the majority of people incarcerated or caught up in the legal system are poor. And so, when people think about bond, like Scott said, you're thinking about television where, the judge says bond is set at $50,000. And then, your mom walks in with the note to her house, hands it over, and you're free, right? So poor people don't often own homes. They don't have property. They definitely don't have $50,000. And so when you set a bond, a monetary bond for a person as their only way that they can get out, they're either going to a bail bondsman who is going to charge them all sorts of crazy interest and fees in order to buy their freedom, or you're going to sit in jail. And when you're sitting in jail, you're not doing anything. It's not benefiting you, and you want to get out because people have families, they have, loved ones, they have children, they have jobs. And so bond is this thing that then causes that barrier to freedom. And so the other part that I think people would understand more once you familiarize yourself with how the justice system really works, it's not that I get arrested on Tuesday and I go to trial in a month. There are continuances for discovery. If there's body worn camera from 5 different officers, we're talking about hours of body worn cameras that you have to get. If you have constitutional issues, those get litigated before you actually have a trial. I mean, it's a process that takes a few months at best, and in some cases, years. And so, through no fault of many who are not guilty or have mitigating circumstances, but cannot be released because they cannot afford the bond, the easiest way out if you can't afford bond is to plea. And so that once you plead guilty, then you are on, in many times, probation, and a violation of the probation. And I always tell people, if I was put on probation, I would probably fail miserably. You're talking about you've got to check in with somebody. You've got to get to wherever the probation office is. Probation offices are not always located in the most convenient places. If you don't make it there on time, that's a violation. And remember, the probation agent has multiple people they're seeing. So you've got a short window. So it's not like get there when you can. You've got to work or be in school. If you can't find a job because you have a conviction, you're not working or in school, that can be a violation. There are fees that go along with it. Remember, this is somebody who pled guilty because they didn't have any money to get out of jail in the first place. And now you're asking them to pay to be on probation. So all of these things then lead to a person, it being very challenging for a person who often was in a marginalized community to begin with, a marginalized place to begin with, to free themselves of the criminal justice system. And, so there starts the cycle. And all of that could have been changed if they were able to be released many times. I'm not saying there's any absolute, but many times there could have been a different outcome if they were able to be released pre-trial and properly prepare their case, a defense, or if it is a plea, if there is, that is the best thing, properly able to prepare for that with their attorney, as opposed to rushing into something just to be on the outside.
Right. Qiana, I'm curious if you could speak a bit to the importance, because you mentioned in our last call that there are some people who use Court Watch in a different way, sort of to fuel mass incarceration. I'm curious if you could speak a bit about the importance of using it as an abolitionist tool instead.
Oh yeah, I was wondering. I was got a little concerned when you said that because there's something called Judicial Watch. It's like the far right people. They have that, and I stumbled across it, and it scares me to death. Oh my God, the things that they do with that. But the abolitionist lens that we put on here is to basically say that this system is not working. It's just not working. I take that back. The system is working exactly the way that it's supposed to work, right? And so what we need to do is our abolitionist lens is basically saying that we need to get rid of this system and have something that is based in care, that is trauma informed, that has the resources that they need, and that is not, hyped up about conviction rates. So we have to start to change the fundamental and the systematic ways that we do things. And so Court Watch PG comes into it with that understanding and that knowledge, because not only do we watch the courts, we bail people out, right? And we people often say that want to like donate to us. They're like, so what charges do you all, look, I said, if they have a bond or bail, we're paying it, period. End of discussion. Like it's not all that other stuff, because they're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. How did we get away from that very major component of being charged with a crime? And so life after release and Court Watch PG, having that lens is so important, because you can watch the courts for a whole bunch of different reasons. But when we watch the courts, we are basically watching it for the constitutional rights of the loved ones, the way that they're being treated, and just making sure that we're trying to undo and rebuild something that is actually going to work. And so that's why we're there. That's why we're not just court watching. We're sending out accountability letters. Like today, we just got this accountability letter back from the Prince George's County Police Department, because we're sending them to everybody. Like, and they're getting scared. They don't know what to do. They're writing us back all types of mumbo jumbo. And it's like, we are here, we're not going anywhere. And this is so empowering to the community, because I didn't write this. Like, I mean, the community wrote this letter to the police department. And so they don't know what to do with this. They don't know how to react. And so that's why we're here. We're showing people how to do this. And my vision, my dream is that I can go across this country and just set this up everywhere. And we're just doing this everywhere.
You're making people uncomfortable. I mean, that's the thing. You're making the players in the system uncomfortable, and you're making police uncomfortable and discomfort. They should be uncomfortable. This shouldn't be easy.
Right. Well, Fiona, I want to ask you what you sort of think. I'm curious about, you spoke about your role personally in this and how personal it is to you, but I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about the role of the artist in all of this, the ways that artists can help sort of the public engage. What do you see as that role?
Well, I mean, the way that artists can help is just by getting more attention to these things. Like, I mean, for example, like, I don't really deserve to be on this panel. I'm the freshmanest of freshmen in Court Watch. And I'm not as educated as anyone else on this panel about anything. I have feelings, and I've gotten a huge education already. I mean, these debrief meetings and the committee meetings, and like starting to, like, I attended the lawyer meeting, which I didn't understand any of it, but I'm like, I'm going to keep on going, and eventually I will start to understand this. And the accountability meetings, I'm not on the accountability committee, but I loved listening to them. It makes you understand everything more. So you get, it's a big education. I mean, I've like seriously started thinking about, like, maybe I'll go and study for my GED, even though I don't really care about getting my high school diploma. This has made me feel like I want to learn. What was this? Oh, artists can just get more attention. That's what I'm here for. I'm clickbait. I mean, I'm not the biggest clickbait there is out there, but I'm what we have for clickbait, from what we have to have. I mean, we've asked like other publications to write about this stuff, and they'll be like, well, we'll write about you, Fiona, and you can say like one little thing about Court Watch, but like, thank you for doing this panel, by the way. But yeah, artists can write songs and they can make art about it, and that's wonderful. But the biggest thing I think we can do right now is just like, if you find something that you see is going on that's wrong, and you have the ability to draw more attention to it, then do it. And it's okay if I look like a little bit of an idiot now and then, because I know that it's for a good cause, looking like a fool for a good cause. But I just want to say that, like, you know, anybody that's out there that thinks like, you know, people are being like, what charges do you do? You know, like you were saying, Qiana, like what people ask, like, what charges do you cover? Like, is it like, really, like, these people, they've been charged with something. Doesn't mean that they're guilty of it. They are like, and this is what's so weird to me also, like, we have a right to observe the courts. It's a constitutional right, is it not? Yes, it's isn't it, guys? It's a constitutional right to observe the courts. It's a constitutional right for us, and it's a constitutional right for the loved ones to be able to get a fair trial. So we're asking for this stuff, and we have a petition out there, but man, it's ours anyway, you know. And it's and I just need to say, like, anybody could fall into, anybody, like Marguerite was saying, like, you don't want to judge people for their worst days. And this has also made me a much more forgiving person, and made me much more to think about things before I judge them, and people before I judge them. It's made me look at, anyway, but this could happen to anybody. You have it's so easy to fall into the system. You could just be like driving around looking for a job because you've got children to support, and a cop stops you because your taillight is out and you get a ticket, but you can't pay for the ticket because you don't have a job, and you can't get the money, so you don't pay the money. So then you get like a bench warrant sent to you, so you're supposed to go to court. So then you can't get to court because now you finally did get a job, but you can't get to court because you don't want to lose your job because you need to support your kids. So you're like, oh, I just won't go to court. And then they come and they arrest you, and then you're in jail, and then it's on your record, and then you have to appear, and then you have to wait, you know, say it's a Friday, you're in jail for over the weekend, hopefully not getting sick and catching something that's going to kill you in these times. And then you have to go in front of somebody, by the way, and then your bond is set by a commissioner, whom I just learned is not some like older established officer of the law. They're like half my age. And sometimes, and like just out of law school, and like, great, bless them and everything. But like, I thought that they really, really knew everything. And like, they had all this experience, and that's how they became the commissioner. But so anyway, 23-year-old sets your bond, and looks at the statement of charges and the cops send over, and let's all trust what the cops say, by the way, who are just looking to arrest somebody, by the way, who are trying to get those arrests done. And then, anyway, you get caught in it. Sorry, I got a little too excited.
No, that was great.
It's just so easy. It doesn't, what I'm saying is like, it doesn't, you can't judge people just because they've been charged with a violent crime. You can't judge people. I mean, so much stuff like, and you have to look at the circumstances surrounding it and see how this could have been avoided. Like, you keep on seeing so many like robberies of like 7-Elevens and stuff. And then in the same, and then you hear the public defender be like, okay, well, they were laid off because of the pandemic and they have 5 children. You're like, no wonder they robbed the 7-Eleven, you know? Doesn't make them a bad person, even if they were guilty of it. I mean, I shouldn't, when do they allegedly, you know, but you have to look at, I don't feel like anybody's, and when you listen to the judges and you listen to the prosecutors, you can tell that they are not thinking about what caused a person to be there, or what their whole life story is, or what their needs might be, or how they got here, or what the best thing is to do. They're just going, that looks bad. Pay us money. And like, another thing that I learned that Carmen told me, that this is crazy to me, is that Maryland is like second or something like that in the nation where the politicians take donations from the bail industry. Okay, so every time now that I hear, because okay, no more cash bail, yeah, you're so great, brave boy, but now there's no bonds. Now it's like, okay, since, oh, I can't, like the prosecutors will be like, I'm so sad I can't recommend a money bond, so I'm leaving it at no bond, or you know, I'm getting too excited.
No, this is great. Yeah. This is really good.
Okay. But you can hear that they don't care about these people's lives, and that they really are just looking at the charges and going, that's bad. You're bad. Go away. You don't matter. Let's forget about you. Let's close the doors and forget about them. And anytime any of these people are spending even a day in jail or getting arrested, to imagine the treatment that they're getting inside, it's gotta be completely traumatizing. I was in jail for 1 day and 1 night. And I mean, based on how I was treated as like a little white girl celebrity, I can tell that if I was treated the way I was treated, oh my God, I can't even, I'm so furious for people. I just don't know how, I don't know how the families of the loved ones are even just being able to eat or sleep. They probably aren't.
Fiona is also like the most modest human being in the entire world to a fault. She you know, I'm sorry, like clickbait. I just going back like 2 years, the way we met, I'm sharing a quick thing. I get an email. Rachel, can I go ahead for a second? I get an email from a reporter from Rolling Stone that was like, I'm in court. I'm about to stand up on a case. It's like, care to comment about Fiona Apple? And I was like, yes. She was like my favorite singer growing up. And I like love her music, but like, I think you have the wrong contact. And then it was like, no. Do you see this post? And it shared this post about the fact that Fiona donated 2 years worth of royalties from her song Criminal to this fund that my organization set up to help people facing us that were in asylum proceedings in the US, but like there was no money, like couldn't afford basic necessities, couldn't afford legal fees, had no counsel. And so I'm like, this is the most incredible thing in the entire world. And I'm just gonna like try to reach out and just say thank you. Because here's the thing, she's right. Artists, people with big followings are really important. And I've had really great experiences reaching out to folks, willing to just share information. But then the response that I got was like, let's talk. And the conversation that we had was similar to what you just heard. And like this relationship that seeing Fiona like learn more about the immigration systems and the criminal justice systems, I would just also encourage, like, I think, yes, Fiona has like particular like dedication to the cause. Like there may be few that would do this much, but I also feel like if you're an artist out there or you're someone with like a major platform, like consider, like she said at the beginning, like doing more than just giving. Consider actually speaking to the folks on the ground doing the work, learning a little bit more, asking some questions. That might lead to some outrage, and that outrage might lead to more direct action. Anyway, Fiona, you're
it also leads to meeting people who are really wonderful people. I'm telling you, the court watchers that I've met, all of them, like I love them. Every single one of them individually is amazing. And there's people in there that are like high school seniors, right? We have a couple and they're amazing. I want to reach in and hug them every time and go, I feel so much better about the world because there's people like this out there that are young and that are going to be growing up and ruling, you know, it's just wonderful. And it is a wonderfully supporting group too. I feel like, and I hope this isn't a dumb thing to say, but I feel like a lot of us are like the traumatized people who are putting our hypervigilance to good use. I feel definitely like that's what actually got me to go to the registration the first day, is because I just felt like too much time on your hands, and you start thinking back on your own life and you start like being triggered by things, and I start having the worst panic attacks of my life and just feeling like I need to not think about my life anymore. I feel like I've had my head up my own ass my whole life, you know, because I have. And I think it's just, I'm just trying to say again, like it's a good thing all around for everybody involved. And you can hear people on the calls when we are in the courts a few times, they'll be like, they mention the observers. Sometimes they ask us to identify yourself. I've been asked to identify myself, and I just say, I am a court observer. And they're like, okay, but they know you're there. I keep on thinking back to this time when I was trying to buy a house, and my posture was really bad. And my brother said that when I was walking up to the house that I wanted to buy to meet the people who owned the house, he said, I went through like the stages of evolution where I was like up the stairs, I became more, because I wanted people, and this doesn't exactly relate to this, but it's like when you want people to see you a certain way, you check yourself out, you know, you change, your posture is better. And I think that this is what it does for judges and prosecutors. They curb themselves from being too egregiously horrible. There's still a lot of egregiously horrible shit that goes on, but I think that I know that them knowing that we're there makes them think a little bit more before they just throw someone away, because they know that people are there and they care about those people. I only wish the loved ones could like see us all, you know, watching, because that's what I wish I hope that Marguerite, they know that we're.
Yeah, the clients definitely know. Loved ones, clients, they definitely know. because they can't see the people, but they can, even when we were in non-virtual times, there is something about when a person walks into a courtroom and there are others there. Just like if you are out walking at night by yourself and you see someone across the street, it makes you feel a little bit more a sense of ease. And I just wanted to touch on briefly that in addition to the community participating in these hearings, another thing that it has opened up is that when COVID hit, it was no one knew what to do, right? Like we're all scrambling. And the worst of the worst for an airborne disease virus that in close proximity, that you want to wash your hands and stay clean, like the worst possible place you could be for that would be the jail. And one thing that I think that also has been positive out of this is that we learned that, the jail wanted to do differently. The jail wanted to make, to the extent possible, safety changes. And so it's not perfect by any means, but because the community got involved, because there was this, call for accountability, things changed. And the jail has now, the detention center rather, the lines of communication in trying to make sure that they are doing the right thing because they know that people are watching. So, that's definitely a positive. Like I said, it's not, there's no perfect in criminal justice at all, but these are the things that when you start to see chipping away, making changes for the better, it's not because a legislator wrote a law that said do X, it's because the community is saying, this is how we want our community to look. This is what we want from the actors in our community. And it's because the people are involved.
Mm. I'm going to open it up to questions from you guys in the chat in a minute. But first, Qiana, can you sort of briefly explain ways that people can get involved, whether it's signing the petition, whether it's starting their own chapter?
Okay, so you can always sign the petition. We're virtual right now. I'm gonna put my email in the chat if you want to get in touch with me. So we have, I'm creating a decarceration model here at Life After Release. And right now we have the court watching and we have the virtual, the actual virtual jail support. So actually, if they don't know that we're there, Fiona, actually, while we're, they're court watching, we actually send folks this you either send it to their family if they're home or if they're inside. We'll send this postcard to them because we have their name and their information, right? And so if you want to get in, but like we have our pulse on every single person that goes through our criminal legal system right now, and we want to make sure, and we can do more with more people. So please volunteer with us. If you want to donate money, that's always great, but we need to build capacity by having you come out. And if you only have capacity to court watch one time, great. If you want to write letters, send out postcards with us on Fridays, great. Whatever you can do, just reach out to us and do that. I'm going to drop it in my email address in the chat, and then I am going to send out, I'm looking forward to hear from everybody. So I'll put everything in the chat.
That's important, what Qiana just said. I feel like to help get people to sign up to Court Watch is that just because you are a volunteer doesn't mean that you're going to be doing this all day, every day. Everybody is really supportive of and not even just supportive, but like it's almost like a demand that you take the space that you need and that you don't do anymore that you feel like you can do. And like Carmen is like always reminding us all of that. And it's just so loving. She's so loving. I don't even know how she's just worked so hard all the time and is so loving to us all. And like, it's always like, if you need to the new people I saw, she's like, if you need to talk, if you need any help, I'm here. And it's, yeah, it's a good community to be in. And like I have a lot of anxiety problems and I have problems meeting new people, and I'm getting a lot more used to doing Zoom now because of Court Watch. But when I joined, I honestly, like, I didn't tell you this, but like I would have like panic attacks before and after every Zoom meeting just because of just like the people, just because it's how it affected me. But because of how everybody is, because of I knew that if I felt like if I had said like this is a problem for me, I knew it'd be okay. That has made me be able to do much more than I ever thought I could. But don't be discouraged from volunteering because you're not sure that you can handle all of this. Like you can whatever you can handle. Everybody, it's okay. It's cool. It's great.
There's some questions in the chat here about how to become a court watcher. So Qiana put the link in there. So if you want to visit that, is there a more general link? Is it just Court Watch?
So I'll put the, let me put the if you want to, we have orientation for Court Watch because we do require, you just don't jump in. We do require, we do offer that you come in and do our orientation first. And we do that every single Wednesday. So before you can actually jump into the courts, we ask that you do our orientation first. So I'm gonna drop the orientation page in the chat as well.
And there's someone also asked about court watching programs outside of Prince George's County. There are. I mean, there's court watch in New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, in places all over the place. You know, what you can do is just Google your location. It's also not just criminal court. There's a range of family court watching programs as well, which is really critical because family court, a lot of damage occurs as well with people having their kids taken away from them, again, disproportionately Black and brown, living only in certain communities. So they're all over the country. And they're dealing right now, I mean, they're part of this coalition that's growing, that it was started by Prince George's County to try to fight to keep virtual access open.
There's like landlord tenant court, like we're trying to get into that. Evictions, folks are getting evicted because of the pandemic. Like the world is, I mean, there's no limit. Like almost everything, it goes to court at some point for something. So like evictions and stuff, and especially for folks that are directly impacted, we're interested in getting ready to start doing that too.
So another question in here, which is a good question. How do we combat prosecutors from setting no bond since cash bonds aren't offered in some counties?
So to combat anything that you see as an injustice starts with who is in the position of power. So it definitely goes back to, you know, educating yourself about who is going to advocate and push for the reforms that you want to see. And so I think that watching and getting involved in Court Watch, in addition to just getting a better understanding of what really goes on, will give you the perspective of who you want to be in those positions in order to make the changes you want to see. And I'm not advocating for one way, one person advocating against anybody. What I'm saying is that the only way things change is when we are informed and we make those decisions. As far as no bonds go in Prince George's County, you know, it is something that we continue to push against. We continue to fight back against, you know, having somebody held indefinitely for all of the reasons we talked about. Mass incarceration is not going to change as long as we keep incarcerating people pre-trial who are presumed to be innocent.
And Scott briefly just answered the question in the chat, but I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more to the last part, the role of the jurors, because I think that's relevant to almost anyone.
Scott, I don't know if you want to answer. This is an area that I am very passionate about because, you know, I've been called to jury duty and my whole life, all you ever see or hear often is like, how do you get out of jury duty? And everyone thinks like, you know, what's the judge going to do? In a jury trial, the people who have the power are the 12 people sitting in that box. Those are the 12 people who make a decision whether you are saying guilty, not guilty. Those are the people who are holding accountable the only person in the courtroom who actually has a duty to and a responsibility to prove facts in the case. You are holding that person responsible to whether they met the standard or they didn't. The judge doesn't get involved until after that verdict is rendered. If we don't have jurors who have life experience, commonalities, who can look at whomever is standing at that trial table with their attorney and understand context of what's being said, what may have happened, it's not fair. And so, you know, I know that like when you come into court or you come into the jury, even definitely now with the pandemic, no one wants to do jury duty. Everybody wants to get out of it as much as possible. But then when you hear about in the media or in the news, these cases, and you're like, how possibly did that person not get justice? It's because the juries are not looking or made up comprised of who is going to bring justice. So I think it is, if you take nothing else from this, when you get called for jury duty, please don't try to get out of it. Please be honest in answering the questions, but please remember, if that were you standing there, you want nothing more, whether it's a civil case, a criminal case, you want nothing more than a person who's going to be open and considerate and really just thoughtful about what is being presented in your case. And so jury duty is so important.
And if there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll wrap this up. Oh, I see that there's more conversations about. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Anyone else on the Zoom? Okay, then we're gonna wrap this up. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you guys for doing this and for all of the work that you do. It's much appreciated. All right, bye.